World Music Fest with our special guest, very special guest, Phillip Blanchett from Pamyua. And man, it's great to have you here because when I met you, it was like 50 degrees below zero in Alaska, which is where you're from, right?
Yep, Anchorage. Live in Anchorage. Originally from Bethel, though.
Okay, so your whole family is from there originally?
Yeah, we're. I got a mom and dad.
Yeah.
So they both have their own backgrounds. My dad's from Philly, and and that's where he grew up. And he was in Vietnam and moved when he was in the service. After his term, he went out to Alaska as a punishment because he wanted to get out. And they were like, "We're gonna send you to the worst place in the world. You're gonna wish you were going back to Nam and like all this stuff." Wow. And they're like, "We're sending you to Alaska." Wow. And they were trying to be really, aggressive and being threatened. But he was like biting his lip because he always wanted to go to Alaska because my grandfather was in the Navy and he was in Attu during World War II.
Yeah.
And so he was in Attu and he has all these old stories of him in Alaska.
Wow.
And my grandfather was a really great storyteller.
Okay.
And so my dad had all these stories of Alaska, and now he was being sent there as punishment, and he loved it. And he met my mom, and my mom is a Yupik lady from Bethel. It's a small town called Mamtaritluk in our Yupik language, and she was going to university studying. They were just having a Yupik language program. Alaska Native Language program at the University of Alaska Fairbanks, and actually it was the first organized department that was creating curriculum and for all the different Yupik, all the different indigenous languages from Alaska. And my mom was interested in the language, and so she became a student. And
so
at that
was she brought up speaking Yupik?
She was born speaking Yupik, and Bethel, where I'm from, is a hub community of 56 villages that are all Yupik-speaking villages.
Is it all the same language, or is it different dialects, or is it all different languages of those?
We have this different dialects. So we have Yupik. There's and then there's some languages that are Siberian Yupik that have a larger difference. Yeah. But then we're also related to the Inupiaq, we're all a part of the Inuit language family. So in Greenland, there's Kalaallit, Nunat, and then Inuktitut. They speak Inuktitut in Canada, and there's all these different languages, but they're all part of the Inuit language family. Yeah. And so Yupik.
And how similar are they? Like, could you understand somebody from Greenland?
There's like my mom is a linguist, and so when she goes to Greenland. In Greenland, they're an autonomous country. Like, they run their own country. The official language is the Inuit language, and so they have several newspapers in the language. They even have publishing companies where they'll publish like Harry Potter in Greenlandic Inuit, and it's really cool to see from our perspective how. But she can read the newspaper and just with the root words understand what's happening. But it's when you hear another language, it takes a while to really. To understand it. Yeah. But there's a lot of similarities. Our group, Pamyua, it's an Inuit word, and it comes from the Inuit word Pamyuak. And Pamyuak means its tail, so the tail end. So the tail end of an animal, the tail end of a kayak, which is a kayak. We call it a kayak. And the tail end, and then in our dancing, which you did, by the way, this guy's a dope Yupik dancer. When he was in Alaska, he's got some serious moves. That the dancing has a chorus that repeats, and then there's a verse that tells the story further. You do repeat the chorus, and you go do another verse, a second verse, and then you do the chorus again, and at the end is the Pamyuak. It's the tail. Okay. And so it refers to that, and so. That's an example of a word that spans throughout the whole.
Throughout all the Inuit
so when
languages.
we go to Greenland, for example, or Canada, or even Siberia, parts of Siberia, they'll say, "What's your name?" We're Pamyua. Pamyuak. And they're like, "Oh yeah, Pamyua." They know. And it's so cool. And so a lot of like the old words like teeth, things that have been around forever. Yeah. In our language, it's kutiq. In Greenland, it's kiuti. And we say nuyat, they say nuyai. And we say ik, they say isai.
Yeah. So it's all very similar roots.
Weather, consciousness, and awareness. We have one word for that, all of those things. We say Pamyua, they say sila. And there's like these really
similar roots.
And it's amazing to connect with
Let's
that.
talk about your music, because I mean that's what you guys are here for with Pamyua. And did you grow up in a musical experience? Like, was there always music in your family playing all the time, or in your culture, or what was that?
There definitely was. We have a tradition of Russian Orthodox. The church came in to Alaska, years ago, and so there's a really great tradition that we grew up in. Slavic, it's a Russian Christmas.
Wow.
And it was really, really cool because it's a week long, and there's a feasting in the villages, and you just go from house to house, and they feed you, and then you sing all these songs, and we would songs would be sung in Yupik, Russian, which was like kind of like a, it wasn't really Russian, it was supposed to be Russian, and English. And so we would grow up hearing these songs, and it kind of once I got older and started learning and listening to different kind of world music and roots music, I would listen to like Ladysmith, Black Mambazo, and I was like, oh, that sounds just like the same harmony and the same
harmony, wow.
The blend of these hymns with the cultural hymn. So we had a lot of influences. And then my dad, he became an ordained minister in a church, black church. So we grew up going to a black church and going a lot of gospel and and that kind of stuff. And there's
so
a lot
did
of folk
all
music.
Rub into what you do?
Yeah, all these different things.
Yeah.
And since my brother and I, we were raised in a Yupik community, but we're black, We're also Blanchetts. My dad would always say, "You're Blanchett. You don't forget you're Blanchett." And your family's, you'll always be there for you.
Yeah.
And
tell me about the community you were raised in. What was that? It was like a rural, very small.
It's dirt roads.
community?
We grew up with no running water, and honey buckets, and it was wonderful. It was a beautiful. We were raised in every summer.
Sounds like the California WorldFest.
Exactly. We grew up going to probably one of the biggest rewards of my childhood, and just I'm so happy that I was able to experience that, was being raised in fish camp. And so our entire family, and my grandmother and her 2 siblings, all of their kids and their kids, who are me, my generation, we all would go to the same fish camp for the entire summer and just be there, and the adults, we'd all harvest fish all summer long.
To be used throughout the rest of the year?
Yeah, you dry the fish, and then you make as much so you have enough, and then enough so you can share as well. And so for us as kids, it was like a kid's paradise. Summertime, 24-hour sunlight.
Yeah.
We would, no rules, we can just roam around and go boating, go swimming. As soon as the water melted, and if it was a sunny day in June, beginning schools, as soon as school's out, us crazy kids would be in the water, in the river, the Kuskokwim River. And
did you have any frame of reference as to what was happening, like for a kid growing up in San Francisco, where I live? Was that like TV world and video games and all that kind of thing?
We had that. We had the modern influences from a community standpoint, but then we were lucky enough to have experience to travel. And we lived in Seattle in the early '80s when underground hip hop was just on the radio, and we're like, my brother and I would just like religiously, have our hand on record and pause, and bringing back all of this incredible music that was like an extension of who we were. Like, we were raised in Yupik country, with these afros and very different, but we would identify through music, in our black music, And so, anyways, we did spend time living in and experiencing some urban culture. And it really helped influence us.
Was there ever a struggle for you in that? Did you ever feel like, man, I wish I could live in Seattle, or it's so much better to be out here on the fishing village? Was there ever like a conflict for you in
me personally,
being a teenager, especially?
Not so much, because because we have Anchorage, and I live in Anchorage now, and so Anchorage is like our big city, and it has all the amenities that that's our Hollywood, that's our that's our Big Apple, and so coming from such a small town and some of these experiences, and I love living in Anchorage. It's really comfortable, and but coming from Alaska, we do a lot of traveling, and everybody in Alaska, we go to Hawaii. You got to go to Hawaii. You got to thaw out. And we travel a lot, and so we get to experience that and soak it all in, and then go home. And that's the best thing, is going home.
What's your musical message with Pamyua? What is your mission, I should say?
I would say that it's all about it's many things, of course, but like, we started off singing traditional Yupik dance songs, and to be a caretaker and be a culture bearer and carrying on these songs. And even though we reinterpret them and do them in different ways and we make it our own, and we don't even know what we're gonna do. We're just like, we don't really plan it. We just feel it. But with that feeling, we have to carry that intention of honor and respect, and that message of carrying on those stories, and they're not. Anyways, there's so much within that. There's so much rich lessons and things within the tradition. So it's about honoring our ancient traditions and doing it in the moment, and owning it and making it a part of your identity and sharing that with other people, and then we can have a shared identity through something that is so special as something that's been happening for thousands of years.
Yeah. I want you guys to think of some questions. I'm going to ask you one more question while they're thinking about it. But I know that life can be hard for young people on quote unquote, reservations. And I know that there's a lot of, depression, suicide. There's a lot of issues for young people, for Native Alaskans. And how does what you do and your experiences and your music, what do you try to do in relation to that experience for young people today?
Well, we just, like I said, we try to bring honor and make sure that we're sharing that level of respect, and it's infectious, or it just spreads, and those are the lessons that we're taught from our elders. Yeah. And so we're just carrying on and letting, we want to be an example and be someone encouraging the kids, to see the beauty in the hope and the vast possibilities from their identity and what they can do. And it's just wonderful to see that happen through art, through music, through culture, through connection, and it happens. And it's not perfect. I mean, it's each person's going to have their own journey. Yeah. But you can influence and you can be, help out a little bit, and that's I feel like that's a gift that we were given from our community, for our elders, but there are a lot of really deep struggles of identity and self-worth, and roles of where you fit in, and our roles of leadership within the men in the community and the women, and struggling with expectations that we're supposed to have to be able to compete in society now. It's so overwhelming, and it's contradictory in the village to how we see things, right. And it really becomes very daunting. And but life is amazing, and just keeping that kind of this prayerful,
eyes
hopeful,
on the prize, look to the future.
Just positive, stay human.
It must feel. How do you feel about being able to take this, traditional music and share it with new audiences beyond where you're from?
We're like communicators in a way to non-native people, showing a little bit of our culture and identity, and so it's a beautiful process to be able to share with the people and invite people to to be, learn about what we're doing, and learn about where we're from. And I don't know, I'm not sure how to, but we do that. And by doing that, just kind of subliminally and just on the peripheral, our people back home, they're proud. And so just to know that we're representing and we're sharing a positive message with non-native people, because a lot of our struggles are identity and self-worth, because outside of our communities, we're hearing these messages or interpreting these messages that we're not good enough, we don't matter, we're not beautiful, we're not smart, we're all, and even though we know that's not true, that's what we're hearing and feeling. And so when we started our group, 23 years ago, and non-native people were so excited about, Pamyua, or like learning how to say our name, and then we get on the, we're in the newspaper, and we're, people are starting to celebrate what we're doing. It really sends us really amazing message to our native people and the people, our family back home, and that's a great feeling to know that you're doing that.
That's awesome. What's the most important thing that you want people outside of the Yupik community, in the rest of the America and the world at large, to know about what's happening in Yupik country today? What's the most important, most pressing issues?
Well, a big thing is, within our music, we don't really communicate like political ideas and stuff, but we kind of let our music speak for itself in a way, and our songs are traditional songs, and we're honoring them, and they're about hunting, about our livelihood, living on the land, our relationship and our spiritual relationship with ourselves, consciousness, the world, everything. And so it's getting in touch with that idea, that frame of mind, that perspective is a real benefit. Connection to nature, and how we're a part of it, and how how to encourage that connection with people that are different than you.
Yeah.
And so that relationship and connection to nature. Of course, we want to bring honor to our elders and our people who taught us and who have been there, living that beautiful spiritual way of life.
Yeah.
And so we want to do that. Yeah, we want to do everything. We want to do what you're doing, Michael. Right. For sure, man.
All right. The last question I asked every single person who comes on the show is, in this world that is constantly trying to dehumanize us and attach a number to our name in some way, what is it that you do to hold on to your humanity? How do you stay human?
I close my eyes and dance and move, and I think because it brings so much joy to that. One thing I like to say is that a lot of our traditions, they're to honor the youngest people in the village or in the community, and the oldest people, and it's to give them as much pleasure and comfort as possible. And we create these devices of communication, of celebration, and to be able to honor them and to bring that kind of happiness to our community. And so that's cool, and that's why, with our music, it's like kind of kid friendly, and old people like it, where we don't really vibe with a lot of younger 20-somethings, but that's cool.
All right, well, thank you so much for being here on the show today. That's Phillip Blanchett from Pamyua here at the California WorldFest. We're super grateful to have you. And remember to stay human. Stay human.